Welcome to Retirement Rescue Radio, a show specifically designed to help retirees and pre-retirees maximize their financial efficiency so you can live the retirement lifestyle you've always imagined. Your host is Nate Miller, investment advisor representative and author of the CPR Retirement Rescue Roadmap. Nate discusses thoughts and ideas from some of today's most knowledgeable professionals in the field of finance. He offers strategies along the way to help you make better financial decisions so you can maximize your retirement. This is Retirement Rescue Radio.
Hey there, Retirement Rescue Radio listeners. We've got a very special episode today. So today we have a guest, Dr. Dorian Mintzer. And Dr. Dorian is a world-class retirement coach, doctor of philosophy, and the founder of Revolutionize Retirement. And Dorian believes that our bonus years are a time to learn, grow, and evolve, and that we need to live our lives with intention, not regrets. She helps her clients discover their gifts, live their purpose, and make a difference in the world. And as new parents in their 50s and 60s, she and her husband are also living proof that there is no one-size-fits-all transition and that retirement is a journey and not a destination. She's also the co-author of The Couples Retirement Puzzle, 10 must-have conversations for creating an amazing new life together, where she explores how couples can continue to earn money, stay engaged in life, and remain happy together. And in today's conversation, we're going to dive into exactly what it means to revolutionize retirement, how to navigate major life transitions, and why people come to her for help. We're also going to talk about optimistic realism and the 5 stages of change. And to get a free copy of Dorian's book, The Couples Retirement Puzzle, 10 Must-Have Conversations for Creating an Amazing New Life Together, here's all you got to do. Step 1, just subscribe to the podcast and leave an honest review and rating over on iTunes. And then step number 2 is just send an email to asknate@retirementrescueradio.com with your iTunes username and mailing address, and we'll ship you the book for free. It's that simple. And we'll just send them out till they're gone. We don't have a whole lot of them. And so if you do want one of those, make sure you do that as soon as possible. And also don't forget to visit her website, revolutionizeretirement.com, and sign up for her free monthly webinar that she has the 4th Tuesday of every single month, with the exception of December because it's too close to the holiday. So it'll start up in January. And if you do sign up and can't make the time, don't worry, you will receive the recording too. All you need to do is make sure that you sign up for it. And so that is it, guys. So without further ado, here is my interview with Dr. Dorian Mintzer. Well, hey there, Retirement Rescue Radio listeners. I'm your host, Nate Miller, and I've got a very special guest with me today, Dr. Dorian Mintzer. Dr. Mintzer, welcome. How are you?
Fine, thanks. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Nate.
You bet. Well, thank you for taking the time. And so are you ready to help rescue some retirements?
Absolutely. I'll try my best, at least.
Well, great. And so first off, before we get deep into everything, I always like to ask my interviewees a question. If there's anything unique or maybe something about you that is fun, that maybe is not readily available on the internet, because, we just went through a big bio of all your accolades, but like I said, you can Google that and find all of that. So is there anything unique that you would like to share with my listeners to kind of help make you a little more human and help them get to know you a little bit better?
A couple of things I thought of when I was prepped about that question, which is I love hiking. I love spending time with friends. I love reading. But the thing that I really realized is I kind of walk the talk in that I realize my friendships are people that really span the entire lifespan. So I have friends that are a whole lot younger than me, all the way into their 90s. And so, I really am a believer in kind of intergenerational connections, because it just makes life so rich. And I don't know that's known about me, but I just realize I have some dear friends that age, that are across the age span.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that gives what they call maybe 360-degree feedback. It's like you've got older people that you hang out with, and they might be able to impart wisdom upon you, and you've got younger ones that you hang out with, and you might be able to impart some kind of wisdom on them too.
Exactly. And I just think that's really important for your listeners to realize. I really am a believer in learning from and being able to transmit our knowledge to, kind of sages and seekers. I think
And any good leader always has someone else that they're following as well, because we're never done learning. There's always someone out there that has more information on something that we don't. And so that could always impart some kind of wisdom to help us unlock something that we might be going through or dealing with at the time.
Absolutely. And I think just to add one piece to that is so often people say, well, there aren't role models now for how to live this next stage of life because we're living longer. There really are. Mm-hmm. So I just invite your listeners to kind of think about who they know that are older that really are role models, and they may not have thought about them that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good advice. All right. So I wanted to start out with, the bio on your website. One of the promises that you have there is to revolutionize the concept of retirement. And I know I've had several interviewees on that have wanted to just kind of get rid of the whole term retirement itself, right? But, revolutions are usually driven by some type of frustration or some type of injustice or the need for change. So why is it that you feel like retirement needs to be revolutionized?
I think there are a few reasons for it. I think it's an obsolete term in some ways because now that people are living longer, many people want to keep working, many people have to keep working. And I think that back when the term was kind of coined, actually it was coined in Germany, but it also is associated when Social Security first started. Mm-hmm. And, the lifespan was much shorter. And by the time people reached 62 or 65, they were so totally burned out. And now, we really are living longer. And 62 and 65 is still part of mid-age. And so the idea of retiring at that age, if, you still have things you want to do, seems pretty obsolete. So I think it is a revolution of necessity to say, if we're going to live this much longer, let's think about other ways of dealing with what's next. It doesn't have to be working full time, maybe the way you were, but it may be that you still want to use your skills in a different way, or you want to do something totally different, but you don't need to retire from life. I think retirement used to have a lot of these D words, detachment, despair, depression, death, and that was because lifespan was shorter and people retired and, within maybe 7 to 10 years, they died. And the exception was living longer. Now the expectation is living longer. And I think it's important to view it more as a journey and that there's a lot of important years ahead. So they're more R words, like let's revolutionize it, kind of rewire yourself, refire yourself, reinvigorate yourself, whatever word you want to come up with.
Yeah. Instead of retire, it's refire.
Exactly. And it used to be kind of a retiring from life. I mean, life goes on and it's like how to stay engaged as fully as you can for as long as you can.
Well, yeah, because even talking about retiring from something, it's to draw back from it. And we're not drawing back at this time. We want to kind of move forward with a different phase of our life, really.
Exactly. And often there's a continuity of values we have, although sometimes they may change a little as we get older. We have character, strengths, and traits. And sometimes it's good to even do an assessment and remind ourselves what they are. But why not think about using it, whether it be for paid work or volunteer work, or just the way you engage with children, grandchildren, if you have them, nieces, nephews, other younger people. We still are important people, as we age and can use our skills in whatever way we choose.
And so you have a TED Talk that actually is titled Embracing Your Bonus Years. And I love that term, bonus years. So how do you define bonus years and why did you actually use that term bonus?
Well, it's not actually my term. I mean, a lot of people are using it now. So I give credit to the universe in relation to that.
Say it enough times and it becomes yours, right?
And it becomes mine, right? But why I like it is because we do have this gift of longevity right now. We have these extra years, and they're not years of just being old and frail longer. I mean, there really are a lot of studies that, between the ages, the traditional retirement ages of 62 and 65, we have 20, 30, 40 more years ahead. And that's a bonus. It's a gift if we choose to use it. Now, the old notion of aging and retirement was that around age 62, 65, it was all downhill. It's not that case anymore. But if you believe it is, if you still subscribe to that notion of aging and retirement, unfortunately, it might go downhill for you. And you might be sitting there sort of with this expiration date on your forehead. But it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, these bonus years are a time to grow, a time to learn, a time to evolve, if you choose to. And so I really do like focusing on these bonus years. Some people say there's actually an extended middle age. The middle age now is more, 50 to 70, 75. There's time to still be vital. And even people in their 80s and 90s still are very vital. Not everybody. I mean, we all age differently. And, we all do age, no matter how well we try to take care of ourselves.
And Dr. Mintzer, I love people that I want to say don't fit into the stereotypes that are out there. And I exercise a lot. And, when I hit my 30s, I had so many people saying, oh, it's, downhill from here. And it just didn't happen. And I hit 40 not too long ago. And they're like, oh, it's all downhill from here. And it's like, I can look at each one of those times somebody has said that and then gotten in better shape at that point in my life than what I'd ever been. And I've got a couple clients right now that are, one of them 68 and 66, and they just finished the 50th state that they ran a marathon in together.
Beautiful example.
And they've almost run 200 apiece total in their lifetimes. And doing that when you're in your upper 60s is almost unheard of. I say it's more and more heard of now, but as a couple to do that, I don't know if there's anybody that I've found as a couple that's been able to do that in all 50 states at that age. And it bucks the stereotype.
It bucks the stereotype, which is such an important point. It's just a stereotype. And there are so many different ways that we age. But what I do think is important is I am a firm believer that 70 is not the new 50, 60 is not the new 40, because that's still holding on to we all must be young. 70 is the new 70. And so, maybe the pace that these people ran might not be the same pace they might have run in their 30s or 40s. Who cares, in a sense. 70 is the new 70. I like to say too, I'm 75 and, and I'm proud to say I'm 75 because I want to say this is what 75 can look like. There are people 75 who have had other mishaps. Just life circumstances can affect it, but also physical issues can affect it. So we all age differently. But there's no reason why, as whether you're 75, 80, 85, my husband's in his late 80s and he works out every day, not like he did when he was younger. But, taking care of ourselves is so important. There's a statistic I always like to add, if I can just add it for a moment here.
Absolutely.
That there's been some research that by the time you're 65, it's actually 30% genetics, which is not small if you've got genetic factors.
Good size, yeah.
But 70% are things you can have some control over. We cannot control everything, but exercising, like you're saying, exercising your body and brain, nutrition, meaningful relationships, for some spirituality, sense of community, all of these attitude, all of these things impact how we age. There's actually a study out of Yale, Dr. Becca Levy, that says that you have an extra 7.5 years with a more positive attitude toward aging. So if you view it as all downhill, unfortunately, you might spiral down that rabbit hole. So it's important to realize you can impact your mindset if you choose to.
The whole self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And by the way, you don't look a day over 65. I don't know. You definitely do not look your age. I was surprised when you said you were 75.
But see, even that, not to call you on it, but I have realized myself that when people say, oh, you look young for your age or you don't look 75, I try to counter it by saying this is what 75 looks like.
Yeah.
And so when people say, oh, you look good for your age, it's really nice to be able to say, well, thank you. You look good too, whatever age you are, rather than it having to be the age. I think that's the part that's difficult because there's so many stereotypes about aging and sometimes ageism on both generations, older as well as younger.
Oh, yeah. I'm in my 40s now, so I'm starting to get a little bit away from ageism when I was maybe in my early 30s. It's almost now I'm old enough to know better, but I'm not too old to, I don't know, however it's supposed to go.
That's a good point, right?
And so you started touching on something. I want to go into that. You're talking about, 30% is kind of hereditary or genetics, right? And the rest of it we can kind of control over. So how much control do we really have over our future, and what areas that we can control maybe should we focus on?
The hard reality is we cannot control everything. As I said earlier, no matter how well we take care of ourselves, we all are going to age, and ultimately we will all die. But how you live and how much you allow yourself to kind of integrate the different parts of yourself, to maximize what you have, with dealing with the reality of getting older. Sometimes we have to change our dreams. For example, if you can't hike anymore, find more flat surfaces for walking, or if you can't, do altitude. I know with my husband, we can't do altitude anymore. So you change the dreams, but it's so important to still have dreams, and to be realistic. I like the term optimistic realism. I first heard it from a friend and sociologist who I admire a lot, William Sadler. And I think the term's been used by a lot of other people too, but it's being optimistic, but also being realistic, that maybe we can't do some of the things we did before, and now, COVID has really made it difficult. A lot of older people, are recognizing, who knows when travel's going to open up again. And so, something that people were looking forward to may or may not happen. And so dreams have to change. But I think the more that we're able to be realistic but optimistic, the better our life can be. Not to say it's, peaches and cream, and harder for some than others. I mean, we don't all age the same way in spite of our best intentions. So I guess a long-winded response to, we can't control everything, but I do think that good nutrition, meaningful relationships, what I had said before, there's a lot of the impact of what's called positive psychology, of thinking about connection, engagement, purpose and meaning, meaningful relationships, a sense of accomplishment, sort of a sense of agency that even if, you're not able to do everything, even if, physical limitations change things, or your hearing's compromised, or your vision's compromised, it's trying to figure out what you can control so you feel you still have an impact, that you're not irrelevant, that you're not invisible. And it sometimes takes some effort to work on that mindset, and to work on it and get support from people to be able to, to feel good about yourself for as long as you're alive.
And this might be a little bit of a sidebar, but you've mentioned hiking now a couple times, and you said that you don't do altitude anymore, because and my parents did the same thing. They moved out to Colorado, right. Couldn't handle the altitude, to move back to the farm that we grew up on. But did you used to climb mountains then? Hike mountains?
Used to hike mountains. We used to ski. Okay. And we needed to change that a number of years ago. My husband, we used to go out to Utah to ski, and even with being there a few days ahead, the altitude just really did him in. And he just realized that we couldn't ski. We did find a place in Canada that was lower altitude and skied at, but then hips give problems, or knees give problems, and all. So we don't ski anymore. But there are other things that we can do.
What was your favorite mountain to climb? What was your favorite hike, I guess, if you have maybe one or two?
One I did without my husband was actually a women's trek, going to Nepal. That was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And we used to do a lot of hiking in Utah, in Colorado. It's hard to pick a favorite mountain, but I just, there's something about being outside, hiking and wildflowers. We did a lot of traveling also when our son was younger. We were older parents when our son was born. And so we decided we wanted to do as much traveling, family adventures as we could. And we've done I have to say, I feel so grateful. We did hiking in the Alps, and we did, hiking in France. And I mean, I can't pick, everything was beautiful. It's terrible to say. I can't pick a favorite really, but I love hiking. There's something about being out in nature. And the vistas that you see, and being both with yourself and nature, and realizing, that we're a part of this world in a sense. So
you've done some real serious hiking then, it sounds. That's awesome. I've done 2 14ers in Colorado. So
yeah,
kind of easy for me to pick my favorite.
I've never really paid attention to sort of the heights of mountains and stuff, but it's something that's always that I've loved doing. And I encourage your listeners, whatever it is, find something that really opens you, to nature, to yourself, just being outside, sometimes just walking. And I just think nature can be such an important part of helping us feel kind of gratitude of being alive, and just figuring out how to engage with it.
I like early morning, before really anybody's woken up at that point. Really before, I'll say before the world has So
and there's a benefit of early morning. I mean, it's like, one of the things that people always talk about when they're not working anymore, working the same way, is what's going to get you out of bed in the morning. And sometimes waking up, having an exercise routine, getting out for a walk, it's a sense of mastery when the day just starts. You've already done something, and here the whole day's ahead of you. So it's kind of nice. So I tend to be a morning person with that too, but not everybody is. So I recognize that.
There's that, the 5 a.m. club, and there's a lot, but work with your rhythms, whatever works for you.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And you shared an interesting point in your TED Talk about life transitions, and we've been talking about hiking and other things.
Right.
So that transition. Can you share your viewpoint on different life transitions?
Right. Well, if you think about it, all of life are constant transitions. There always are endings. There's always sort of a period of an unknown, and there are new beginnings. And, it's sort of like thinking about a trapeze artist. They climb the ladder and grab on, and then with a leap of faith, they let go, hopefully with a safety net underneath, and then they grab on again. And so at different stages of life, hopefully there's a safety net, but transitions from going to being born to start with, kindergarten, school, marriage, work, retirement. What I find helpful is encouraging people to think about what are the transitions that you are conscious about, or to become conscious about, in your life. Do you have more trouble with the endings, kind of with the unknown, with the new beginning? It's helpful. And, do you have trouble with none of it, with all of it? It's just helpful to know, because it may inform you and help you have a sense of how are you going to approach this next transition in your life. And if you're in a relationship or with friends or siblings, it's really helpful to have that conversation together, because it can help kind of where is your Achilles heel? Is it going to be the ending? Is it the unknown, the new beginning? And, it really can make a difference. I've had many people who say, I really never thought about that, but it helps me know. And it may be part of what makes a difference between some people deciding they really want to make a plan ahead of time to have a sense of what they're going to. And other people say, I'm just tired. I'm burned out. I don't want to think about it yet. I want to, and it's fine. Give yourself permission with the ending. But during that maybe unknown period, it may be good to say, okay, I'm going to give myself permission now to think about, how do I want to live the rest of my life? What's important to me? And with that concept of transitions, if we're focusing on kind of the retirement part, what I like to encourage people to think about is, for you, what role has work played in your life? What is it about work? And in general, this is a kind of a stereotype, but in general, it's a reason to get out of bed in the morning. Pre-COVID, it was, kind of getting out of the house.
Yeah.
And if you were in a relationship, time together and time apart, that's modified a bit. Some people say COVID has given people a chance to think about, oh my gosh, what's 24/7 together like? But it gives you also self-esteem, generally connection, engagement, purpose and meaning, a sense of community. So with the concept of transitions, I encourage people to think about what for you have been the important parts of work, and whether you're going to continue to work in some way or not. How will you build some of that into your life? What will get you out of bed in the morning? What kind of structure? It doesn't have to be the same kind of structure that you had with work, but what do you want to accomplish? Because I think accomplishment is a good thing too, and it may be to do nothing, to just have leisure time, but to think about it, and to think about how do you want to build in, particularly this connection, engagement, and purpose and meaning, because I think it's crucial for people. And what I often find is, people may just want to do nothing for a while, and then maybe a year or two later, oftentimes, since I'm a coach, people might appear saying something's missing in my life. I don't know what it is, and often it's needing that connection, engagement, and purpose and meaning.
There it is.
And that even if you thought it was working, it just might be that whatever you're doing, even if it's wonderful time with grandchildren, or playing golf or sailing or whatever, maybe it will reach a point where, I'm missing something. I need to figure out what it is. And it's fine at whatever time that is to maybe move from, the unknown to, I really want to think about, what's next? What, if anything, do I want to build into my life? So I feel more connected with myself and with the world.
I like your idea of reflecting back on different transitions that you've already gone through and trying to think through, okay, what did I do well? What did I not do well? Was I good with the ending or the beginning of, the end of one thing and transitioning into the next? Was like, and I wonder if in retirement, they have more of an issue with the ending of something that they've been doing for so long. And for some people, their work is their not their personality. It's the being identity. There we go. Just fled out of my brain for a second. Yes, it's their identity. And so, when that's no longer there, now who am I?
Exactly. That's a big issue for people. Go ahead with your question.
Oh yeah, I was just saying, and that work needs to be done prior to that, so that you're not sitting there going, "Who am I without my work?" It should be, "Who will I be when I decide to transition?" Not necessarily maybe retire, but transition.
Yeah. And I'd like to even say that that retirement's no longer a destination. I think it's really helpful if people listening think about it as a transition and a journey. Yeah. So I think your point's so well taken that, how do I want to live this next phase of life? And you're so right. When work has been your pretty much only identity, it can feel traumatizing. And there's a lot of grief. And sometimes people don't understand, you're supposed to be so elated if you're retired. And sometimes people end up getting depressed because it's like, I don't know who I am. And more so it had been in the past for men. But now that women are so much in the labor force, it's happening there too. So I encourage people to think about, who are you in addition to work? Work may be pretty much a major part of your identity, but to begin to think about and maybe even cultivate other parts of your identity as a spouse or a partner or a parent, or maybe with a hobby, and to try to think about building some of those kind of, maybe they're more minor identities, since the work may be key, but, to really give time to think about, who am I in addition to my work identity? I've heard, at workshops I've done, again, it's a little bit of a stereotype, but I've heard more men than women really be terrified about retiring because they don't know who they're going to be. And it becomes important to, to try to develop these other parts of yourself so you become more whole, more complete. And so it's less terrifying. And for some people, that terror may make you decide or influence deciding, I don't really want to totally retire, but maybe I don't want to work as hard as I've been working. Maybe I want to work part-time. And there's some industries that allow and encourage phased retirement. Some don't. But there can be ways of assessing, what are your skills? What are your strengths? What are your values? What ones do you do well? What ones might you want to transfer? What ones do you do well, but you'd be just as happy to let go of? What are there maybe some gaps depending on your age? Are there gaps in, sort of what your skills are and what your dream might be of what you'd like to try? And, maybe in preparation, it's a time there's so many online courses and online programs, many free. Are there some areas that you want to develop so that you still will be marketable? Some people really don't want to not work, but I think, but maybe work in a different way. But I think that when you're working because you're terrified not to, because you don't know who you are, then you, in a sense, potentially pay an emotional price because you may be pushing yourself and not allowing yourself, some reflection on, on things you've accomplished and what you've done. I wanted to make one more comment on what you said before, because it's tied into the transitions. I think it is helpful in the reflection, to really think about what are 3 to 5 things I'm really proud of that I've accomplished, and why, and what are those things? Because I think it can help you in your life review or your self-reflection, to really focus on what kind of lights the fire in your belly, in a sense. What engages you, what excites you, and that may help you decide, a little bit of how you want to shift moving forward.
Yeah, and to your point about the stereotype that it seems to affect men a little bit more as being more difficult to make that transition. I can tell you right now, my dad had a really hard time making that transition. And part of it was when we talked earlier about there's certain things that you can't control, right? He had some health issues and a stroke actually affected his eyesight, so he can't really see. And he's been a farmer his whole life. And one of the things that I've always respected about him is he can build, make pretty much about anything out of wood, metal, welding, you name it, right? And of course, when that happened, that went away. And so, and of course, they've sold the farm. They like I said, they moved out to Colorado for a little while, then came back to the house, never sold that part of it. But he just had a hard time making that transition. And I remember during a particularly low point, I've always respected that ability in him. But I've never, like, that's not my memories of him. I've never been the one that was like right alongside dad building stuff. I did not get the building gene. My sister can actually make stuff out of wood better than I can. The only thing I build are financial plans.
That's still building though.
And so it almost felt like the roles were reversed. I had to become the father for a little while and talk dad through. It's like, listen, you've got so many other qualities than just making stuff with your hands, and had to go through that. And it's been a transition to get him to where he is now, but you can tell he's a heck of a lot happier now than what he was when it first happened. Because he basically got his identity ripped from him rather than being able to transition into it. It was like the transition was that long. There was no period of time. And I guess that kind of brings me to another one. Is there a normal period of time if something like that doesn't force someone into making a transition? Is there any time limit or a time frame that someone could or should look at?
Well, first of all, I do want to comment. Your dad's situation is a beautiful example of how life happens. Life happens when one's busy making plans of how you want to live your life. And, and it is important. It just could change in a millisecond on a dime. And that's where, it sounds like you were providing a lot of important support of really trying to think about, don't give up on life, but maybe change the dreams or change kind of how you can use your skills. And sometimes, just using that as an example, sometimes when people can't do it anymore, they can be a consultant and help other people. And there are various volunteer organizations that help people help other people with trying to do their business. But now, of course, I've lost the focus of what your question was. So ask me your question
Oh,
again.
yeah. So if something's not, if a transition isn't forced upon someone like that,
okay.
Is there like a normal time frame, or maybe how soon before this transition is happening should they really think about something like this?
Yeah. But I did want to, and I want to come back to that, but I wanted to say that health sometimes can force retirement, just as you were describing with your dad. With these different mergers and acquisitions, sometimes people have been forced out of work and it was not the timing somebody wanted. And then, and also, with COVID, we're seeing, sort of many places closing, but also we're seeing more and more resignations without people necessarily knowing what they want to go to. So I want to acknowledge that sometimes, without having had any prior time to plan, people are sort of forced into thinking about, how do I want to live the next stage of life? And there are ways to do it. But I think in general, there's somebody who's written a really nice book, Ken Dykewald. It's titled "What Do Retirees Want?" And even before his book, but he talks in his book about different stages. What I tend to find is that people like at your age can begin having fantasies about, I don't know that I really want. I don't know how long I want to work, but I don't want to work forever. And Ken actually talks about that as the imagination stage. You want to think about it that way, that way ahead of time, it can, sort of be there. And then, as it gets to be maybe 5 years ahead or something, it varies for some people, but, I'll sometimes have people come in for coaching, some in their 40s, some in their 50s, some later, but those that know that they're better at the planning, that they have trouble with the letting go, often decide they want to start thinking about just the areas I've talked to you about. And people, sometimes want and need some help. And there are people who help people kind of thinking about this next stage of life. And sometimes just thinking for yourself about, what do I like doing? What would give me a sense of connection, engagement, purpose, and meaning? How do I want to use my skills? So, if you know yourself to be somebody who does better with less of that unknown period, let yourself think ahead and begin to plan ahead. And to think about, is it that I don't want to work at all, or I don't want to work as hard? Is there a way I can work smarter? Is there a way I can reassess what my strengths are and maybe use my strengths and skills in a different way in my current job so that, I might want to stay there longer? Or what are, again, some of the gaps of things I want to learn so I really can, move in a different direction? Some people talk about, working because they know that they had to raise a family or earn a living, and their heart wasn't in the work they were doing. And so some people like to develop what are called encore careers. Sometimes it's a giving back in some way, but there also are encore careers where you can feel like it's from your heart, but you still earn some money. You still earn a paycheck. But I think, if you know yourself to be somebody that does better with some planning and anticipating, then I think it's helpful, to let yourself plan ahead. There's a model that I particularly like by a psychologist called James Prochaska. And he talks about 5 stages of change. And I find it really helpful for people because sometimes people think, we just have to be ready to act. But what Prochaska says is there's he calls pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparing, action, and then maintenance. And so, that imagination time, one could think about, it's just percolating, it's just bubbling around in your head. And then you start really thinking about it. And then, you can start preparing, what do I need to think about? What do I need to do? And then it's the action, and then it's maintaining it. So I find that frame helpful for people. Tied in with that transition, it can help you navigate kind of that ending and unknown in a way, if you're just, I sometimes find these cognitive frameworks helpful for people.
Mm-hmm. I like that. That first part sounds like the brainstorming session. And what I always like to think about when you're brainstorming is you say, nothing's off limits. Like write everything down first. That would kind of be the what would you call it? What was it?
Pre-contemplation.
Pre-contemplation. Yeah. Pre-contemplation. Nothing's off limit. Write everything down.
Right.
Summiting Mount Everest, whatever, put it down there. Right. And then the next stage might be like, okay, now let's actually go through and see really, really what I think I would actually want to do, not just what's crazy to do in retirement.
Exactly.
Like, Mount Everest might be something crazy to do, but I really don't have a want to do it at this point. So let's just actually, and then we can whittle it down from there. And So, and I think what I took from that was almost like with financial planning, it's never too early to start.
Absolutely. And I really do agree with that. And there is really a fun, I love your idea of writing the list, because I think that's part of it. There's something called a vision board.
Oh, yeah.
Where, you get, from whatever is near you, you get a board, a poster board. And then, go through magazines or pictures of things, that interest you, or quotes that you see. And it's really kind of fun sometimes to have it concretized in front of you, to think about what are all these things that are bubbling around, that pre-contemplation. And then, as you say, and I think you said it so nicely, then you whittle it down to, what do I really want to do, or do I envision is possible for me? And in what I consider possible, am I limiting myself? But I think at the beginning, think limitlessly. And then, the reality, that optimistic realism can come in, to begin to decide what direction you want to go.
Yeah. And so in your TED Talk, you talk about the difference between aging and becoming complete. And so can you go into your views on that as well?
Yeah, I really think that there's this big paradigm shift about aging now that we are living longer. And it's true that, if we live many, many years, probably at the end, there may be some time of frailness and, that needing to let go of some things that we used to be able to do, and maybe a shift from being as independent to more dependent. But I think the goal is to try to allow ourselves during these stages of life, to age as vitally and fully as we can. I mean, people, even with terminal illnesses and chronic illnesses, that mindset, and being able to feel some kind of self-agency, that controlling the parts you can be so important. So, even if there's the grieving, the loss of vision, like you mentioned with your dad, with the stroke or limited vision, or the hearing, or a diagnosis of an illness, there really have been many studies that our attitude of how we deal with it is so, so important. So what I think is helpful in terms of aging, and I think one can start doing it early too, is constantly just reflecting on your life. Kind of, where have I been? Where am I now? What's ahead? Thinking about your values, your strengths. And I think you can do it at your age, younger. But particularly as we get older, it's easy with maybe that sense of diminishment to begin that downward spiral. So I think it is important. That's where the life review is important, to really think about, what are some things you're proud of? What are things you're grateful for? Are there things that, maybe you need to make amends and forgive yourself or forgive other people? What are these important areas that are going to help you feel more whole? What are some things that maybe you had to put on the back burner, when you were younger, because there were so many other responsibilities and requirements that you had? Might you be able to do that now? Learn a language, try to play an instrument. Even if your eyesight's going, if you can still hear, audible books. And, there's ways to stay engaged. And I think there's this opportunity to integrate some of these parts of ourselves that we might have had to let go of earlier, and to become more whole or more complete, to say, well, I didn't have time to do such and such, but that was important to me. Are there ways to think about that now? Integrate these different parts of your identity. And I think it's tied in with that gratefulness, with that sense of, just really recognizing we all have good, bad, and ugly parts of ourselves. And we can feel fuller if we can acknowledge and, learn from our mistakes, forgive ourselves, forgive others. Mm-hmm. I think part of the goal is trying, if we can, at whatever age we are, to try to be living our life so that we don't have regrets of things not said or done. I mean, there may be some there, but we do see how life can change in a millisecond. So I think at any age, it really is helpful to try to think about, where am I? What am I proud of? What have been the mistakes? What have I learned from it? Are there any things I still want to say? Any forgiveness I need to do? It helps us feel more whole, more complete. So I guess that's my response to the question.
Yeah, I like that. So what are you proud of? What were you good at? What maybe you had to put on the back burner at some point in your life that you really enjoyed that you haven't done for a while? Maybe you want to reintroduce that. I like the suggestions you have on the thought process and what you can actually use to get you to where you can figure out some different things that you can do or some different things that you want to try. Exactly. I mean, I've even, since I'm blessed enough to be interviewing a lot of people, I'm getting these ideas now. And so it's almost like I'm taking like little mini retirements and trying to figure out some of these other things that I like. And COVID actually kind of helped with that. Let's true. Put you at home with your wife, for 24 hours a day, kind of simulate being semi-retired for a while and see how that works out. Right. So, yeah. So and
maybe from that, realizing you shouldn't necessarily be joined at the hip.
Exactly.
The healthiest relationships, even if you're confined to your home, is still having some of your own interests and own things that really engage you. And then the interdependence is bringing it back to each other. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely not good for me to be home that long. No.
Many people are discovering that.
Yeah. And okay, so that's good. And you mentioned in your TED Talk also, and I'm a big believer in this, that money is a tool. It's something that we're supposed to use. Money is supposed to stay in motion. I always tell people we're not Scrooge McDuck from the old cartoons where we've got these big silos of money we're just going to swim through. That's not what money is for. And so I guess in your point, when you're talking about money being a tool, do you think that many retirees view it that way, or do they have a trouble making, I'm going to use that word transition again, from I need to just grow this number to, now I'm actually supposed to use this money? It's like, and do you find that they have trouble making that transition?
Again, it sort of depends on the person, but basically, oftentimes, yes. And that's where I think financial planners like you can be, so helpful. That, financial advisors who, help people look at money as a tool and sort of how you want it to help fuel the lifestyle that you want is really important. But I think money is such a loaded topic for people. And it's often hard for people to talk about saving, spending, and there's been so much hype about this number. But a number doesn't mean anything unless it's somehow connected to how you want it for yourself, how you want to use it. And having this great silo of money, if there's not the connection, engagement, and purpose and meaning in your life, money does not bring happiness. So I think it really is important for people to open themselves to thinking about money as a tool. You want it to work for you. And yes, I think sometimes the giving the identity, the work identity up it can be really hard for people to think, there's not money coming in. I don't know what that means in terms of spending it. And, people have different ways of kind of working that out. It's part of why some people, when they're confronted with the reality that, hopefully they're going to have these bonus years, some decide, I do want to work longer. Maybe I don't have to earn as much as I was, but, if possible, I'd like to still bring some income in because, these are the things I want to be able to do. So I think it really is important for for people themselves in a relationship with financial advisors, with coaches or therapists, to allow themselves, to talk about it. I always say that money, sex, and death have been taboos in our society, but we need to open up the awareness that all those things are important to talk about.
I know, and in my line of work, I'm at least talking about two of those almost every day.
Right. Right. And in my line of work, it's like kind of hitting all of them. And I always say to people, no matter how much or little money you have, it really is important to talk to a financial advisor. That I can help people kind of work on what the questions are to ask. But, I think you're in this really important role of helping people recognize money as a tool and to try to figure out how they want to use it. And yes, it can be a real mindset shift to think about not bringing in money. And so hopefully advisors help people also think about, how to deal with the distributions that are required at certain ages and, really thinking about the financial piece. It's not the whole thing about retirement. I mean, retirement or this next stage of life is money, but much more than money.
Absolutely. Well, this is awesome. I feel like we could go, another hour longer with some of these questions, but we probably do need to wrap up. I want to be sensitive to your time here too. And so if it's okay with you, we'll switch over to maybe some more philosophical questions.
Okay.
And one that I always like to ask is, what is something that 20 years from now, you would like it to be seen as completely absurd? Or if we say that another way, what is something that you would like to look back on 20 years from now and say, man, I can't believe we used to do X?
I think that's a wonderful question. And I guess a few things come to mind, but I think the main thing is in 20 years, I'd like to say, I just can't believe that our society was so ageist, both in terms of older people, but also in terms of younger people. I hope in 20 years, there's less kind of age segregation. There's more intergenerational living, communities again, neighborhoods kind of thing.
Yeah, of all
where people of all generations, where people learn from each other. So I think that's a big part of what I love to be able to see not be there anymore. Kind of the, no more ageism, really being able to recognize, that, people throughout the lifespan have a lot to give and to gain. And for older people to really recognize that if you allow yourself, there's a wisdom and perspective that you have, but also a lot you can keep learning from younger people. But I think the obliteration of ageism would be something I'd love to see. And, seeing people, there's such disunity in our country. I would love in 20 years to still, be a country and still be a democracy. I mean, I don't want to get political here, but, that would be part of what I would hope for too.
Definitely. Okay. What would you say is some of the best advice you've ever received?
Well, I think it is to be open to people, to be open to each other, to feel gratitude, to really, really work on recognizing that in some ways our thinking really does impact how we feel, and that, there are real ways that we can try to think about, not being Pollyanna, but how to think about things and life events and people in more optimistic ways, so that we can feel more of a connection rather than disconnection with people. And I think for me, positive psychology has so impacted my life with this importance of connection, engagement, purpose and meaning, meaningful relationships, having a sense of accomplishment and gratitude, forgiveness. I think for me, those are really important parts of life. I mean, it's so easy to go down that rabbit hole, of despair and giving up. And I think the focusing on the gratitudes and positive things and thinking about how can I make a difference, even in tiny, tiny little ways, differences in just smiling at somebody when, I'm outside. I mean, with a mask on, people can't see a smile, but they can see the smile in the twinkle of your eyes. I mean, I can see people smiling when I'm walking around with masks on and stuff. So, I mean, that's probably the best advice I have gotten in terms of, approaching life really with a gratitude of being alive. I mean, hopefully I'm going to be around for a long time more, but I do try to live with this awareness that I've learned from some of people who are older than me of who knows when our time is. So I want to try to stay present and focused and try to say the things that are important. So to the best of my ability, I'm trying to live without having a lot of regrets. Not that it's 100%, but
yeah. So in response to you can't see the smile behind the mask. Yeah. So I just wear masks that have smiles on them.
That's lovely. Yeah, that's nice.
I was a Ninja Turtle fan as a kid. And so we got the old school 1980s Ninja Turtle masks right there. And they've got big smiles. I like that. Comments on that because I always wear those whenever I travel, whether it's training or vacations. I'm always wearing that going through the airport. I get more people to comment on that than anything else I've done. That's actually allowed me to cut places and go to places in the airport that I really wasn't supposed to be, but they let me in because they were fans of the Ninja Turtles too. So yeah, smile can get you a long ways.
It does. And I bet people smile in response to that too. So, so that's lovely. I think I could start drawing some smiley pictures on my mask. Great idea.
I think my wife got them on Pinterest or Etsy.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Check that out. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess as we're closing up here, is there any resources or best places to find you, to connect with you, to consume any of the value that you're offering for people?
Yeah, I would encourage people to go to my website, which is www.revolutionizeretirement.com. I have a resource list there. There's a giveaway there, but most important, I'd like your listeners to know that on the fourth Tuesday of each month, other than December, because it's too close to the holidays, I have a free webinar. It's open to professionals and the public. It's called the Revolutionize Your Retirement Fourth Tuesday Interview with Expert series to help you create a fulfilling second half of life. And I've realized over the years, this is going to be my 10th year coming up in 2022, I realize I've met so many wonderful people or read incredible books about aging and life. And so I enjoy, it's part of my giving back, and I enjoy being able to bring this to people. So I would encourage your listeners to find out about the series and sign up for it. Once you sign up, even if you can't be there live, it's Tuesday noon East Coast time. Even if you can't be there live, everybody who signs up gets a recording link after the call, so you can still hear, the people that recorded. And I do offer coaching. There's resources there, and just to mention too that there are other organizations. There's Retirement Coaches Association, Life Planning Network. Coming to my website, people can be in touch with me and I can help them, find different resources. And I just encourage people to, let yourself, kind of get to know yourself, do a life review, and just think about how do you want to approach this next part of life, however long it is, because it sounds like you've got clients at all kinds of different ages and stages of life. But, to let yourself think about how do I want to live as fully and vitally as I can, with the realities of aging, this next stage of life.
Well, and you also have a book too, the Couples Retirement Puzzle, 10 must-have conversations for transitioning into the second half of life. And so I think what we'll do is we'll end up purchasing a few of those books. And then if any of our listeners want a free copy of that, then they'll just have to go to our podcast, the retirementrescueradio.com, or on your podcast app, and leave an honest review, and then just email us at asknate@retirementrescueradio.com. Post your iTunes name or number, and then the review, copy and paste it or whatever on there, and then also your address so that we can send you a copy of that book.
Great. Let me just update if it's okay with you. That title was the earlier title.
Okay.
Subsequently, it got republished. And so the new book that's updated is called The Couples Retirement Puzzle, 10 must-have conversations for creating an amazing new life together.
Oh, okay.
So I would encourage the 2014 edition of the book rather than the earlier one, because it's been updated. And I think it's, although written for couples, it's also helpful for individuals, because whoever's important in your life, but it's important to think about these issues for yourself and then to be able to talk with whoever's important in your life. And there's the whole first part of it is about how to have difficult conversations, how to communicate with each other. And then, there are a number of conversations, kind of things that are puzzle pieces that impact each other, that are helpful to talk about. So I would encourage people to take a look at it, but do look at the 2014 copy of the book rather than the 2011.
I'll make sure I get that one. Yeah. And we'll just send them out till they're gone, I guess.
That's fabulous. Thank you. Great.
Well, yeah. Any other parting piece of advice before we go?
I think just open yourself to just recognizing that, hopefully you've got these bonus years ahead of you, or you're in the midst of them right now, and to just allow yourself to do a life review, to think about what you're proud of, what were the peak experiences in your life, and to try to think about for yourself, what are some of the things that you want to integrate into your life so you can feel more whole and more complete. So I would just, I guess that's my takeaway of that. No matter what age you are, I encourage you to start doing that now.
Well, sounds great. Well, Dr. Dorian, thank you for coming on. I think you're going to help rescue some retirements, getting people to think a little earlier, maybe, or just maybe thinking just more creatively, or think at all at what, what they want to do once they finally do pull that trigger, or if they're in retirement right now, the old definition of it, kind of maybe it'll help them figure some other things out of what they want to do.
That would be lovely, and to just know that it's a process, and I think to recognize that whatever you're doing now doesn't have to continue that way unless you want it to. But if you can kind of open yourself to transition, to that there's still potential of some, change ahead for you.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on, and all the rest of my listeners, hope you got a lot out of that. Dr. Dorian definitely shared a ton that can help you out. So take it to heart. Go to her website. We'll have the links in here for you as well. And then if you want a copy of that book, be one of the first few. I don't know how many we're going to get. We're going to get a bunch, and we'll just send them out until they're gone. So send your emails in with your reviews, and you'll find out whether or not you made it or not. So.
And if you didn't make it, then I would just encourage you can get it through Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever.
Absolutely. We'll have a link there too. Okay. Well, that's it. Thank you again. And everybody have a great, let's see, I think this is probably going to be coming out maybe mid-December-ish, maybe even quite the Monday after Christmas, maybe even. So if you're hearing this after Christmas, hope you had a Merry Christmas. If you're hearing this slightly before, Merry Christmas.
And happy holidays to everybody.
Yep. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you.